Thank you for coming, everyone. August is usually a month of vacations, so appreciating the crowd today. I'm calling in from Victoria, BC, Canada. This is the traditional territory of the Wasanich and Algonquin-speaking people. Nice to see familiar faces and nice to see new faces.
Good morning. I am Damien Goldberg, and with Lily, we are the co-leaders of the network. And we were talking with Lily that we have been doing this since 2017. So this is our 8th year, and we had the recordings from all of the webinars that we do every month in our website. So I think we have around 70 by now, Lily, 75. So this is a great resource. We have amazing speakers over the years. So for people who are new to the network, our goal is to bring together supervisors originally from the Americas, but now it's a global network. And our goal is to provide opportunities for colleagues to build a community, learn, support each other. And we organize conferences every year. We wrote a book together. And today, Lynn and Martine wrote a chapter for that book. And they're working on a new book now that they're going to be publishing. So they will tell you more about that later. So we want to welcome for people who continue participating in the program and the people who are here for first time. Is anybody here for first time today? I want to say hi.
Hi.
Hey, you are not for first time. You have been here forever.
You're
We have
funny.
Michelle here. Have been supporting the network since the beginning. Any new participants that want to introduce yourself so we get to know you?
Hi, I'm new.
Welcome, Maria.
This is Maria. I'm from Ashland, Oregon. Happy to be here.
Great, welcome.
Likewise, I'm Rod. I'm new, first time here.
And where are you calling from, Rod?
Walnut Creek, California.
Welcome. Anybody
Hi.
else? Yes.
Yeah, this is Elaine Padilla. I think this is my first time to this group. I'm in Pasadena, California.
Yeah, Elaine is my neighbor. Anybody else want to say hi here for first time?
Hi, I'm Jen. I think this is my first time joining a live session. I'm in Toronto in Canada.
Great, welcome. So welcome to all of new members who want to embrace and want to make you feel part of this community that with Lily we have been developing. We're talking since 2017. So today we have with us Martine and Lynn, who are going to be sharing the work that they have been doing in their new book. We were talking that we know each other since 2018, but I'm going to let you to introduce yourself whatever way you want to, and I'm going to pin you so we can people see you a little bit bigger. And so we're ready for both of you.
Thank you. Good day, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet with you today. Martine is calling in from Corsica, and so I appreciate you making time to be here today, Martine. And I'm calling in from Whistler, which is the shared traditional territory of the Lilwat and Squamish nations here on the west coast of Canada. And as Damien mentioned, Martine and I have been colleagues since 2018 when we did our supervision training together. And we've since collaborated on a number of research and writing projects involving coaches and supervisors from all over the world. The information we're sharing with you today, as Damien mentioned, is based on a study we conducted last year and is going to form a chapter in a book about transformational coaching that's being published later this year by Fielding University. And we really thank those of you in the ACSN who participated in our study. And also, Aida, I see you're there. You've worked with us before and helped us conduct interviews in Spanish. So thank you for that. We entitled this chapter, Deep Diving with Trust in Supervision, and we hope you'll dive into the topic with us, sharing your experience and bringing any questions you have. Martine, did you want to say anything before I move on?
Well, for those who do not know you, neither me, we are, of course, former students from Damien, and we both exercise as coaches and also as supervisors, you in Canada and the US and me in France and remotely in other places. That is all. Should I show the PowerPoint?
Sure, that'd be great. So this study that we're going to talk about with you today, we built from the findings of our study in 2020, which researched the key elements in group supervision that allow deep transformative learning to occur. And in that study, which was conducted with coaches in group supervision in 3 languages in 5 different countries, we found 3 key ingredients were present when transformative learning occurred. The first was the experience of witnessing other stories and being witnessed in our sharing of our own, the emotional bonding with group members, and then third, the experience of being part of an evolving system and learning not just from and about the individual members, but about the whole. In this study, we wanted to explore further the element of emotional bonding, and in particular, the role that trust played in supporting transformative learning.
And so the angle that we've taken in this chapter in the book, the present book on transformational coaching, was to explore how coaches can help bring about the transformation with their clients by engaging in transformation themselves using the vehicle of group supervision. We had a premise, which was that when coaches have experienced transformation, they are better equipped to nurture resonance in relationships and to go deeper in their work with their clients. And this is not new. I mean, if you've read books on from Doug Silsby or from Pat McLean, this idea is well spread that in order to be transformative, you have to have undergone a transformation. So what we've been looking at is what conditions support an environment in which deep transformation learning can occur in group supervision. And here is a quote, if I can show it. Yeah. As Kathy Norwood wrote, she wrote that when coaches aspire to usher a deep change, they must first and foremost to reinvent themselves through ongoing internal work to investigate what? Personal assumptions and potential self-deceptions. This is not only a cognitive exercise. So we focused on group supervision as a vehicle for that ongoing professional development. There are other ways, but we've looked at group supervision. As you know, one of the key benefits of group work is that the coach not only learns from and with the supervisor, but also from a group work that is that from the other members of the group. Each member provides their own insight and experiences, and within the group, we are able to learn from all of that. So the coach is often able to see things differently through the lenses of the colleagues. Yes, I did it. I'm always amazed I can turn the slides at the same time I'm talking. At the same time, for this deeper learning to take place, there are conditions. So, and the conditions must be right. Transformative learning, as we know, can be deeply, it's a deep personal experience. And it's the kind of experience that arouses emotions. So in order to have transformative learning, it means that it involves a fundamental reframing of our beliefs, assumptions, the way we comprehend the world. And it also requires a willingness to question what seems right, what had been right for so long, our education, how we worked until now, etc., etc. The transformative learning engages not just the mind, but the heart and the soul, as well as the body's wisdom, which is something that Lynn is going to talk to you later. So it can mean letting go of long held and very cherished theories about ourselves and others. So it can be painful. This kind of deep learning is not about tools. It's not about techniques or quick fixes. It's about thinking about the things differently when trying new things. So we try new things and then we think about them differently. It requires also the ability to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to show up as who we are, willing to expose one's shadow side. As I said, it can be daunting in a group situation. Many people around, you're being vulnerable, daunting, particularly when the group is new at early stages of group development. Only when the people feel safe, they can risk sharing their darker sides, their missteps, their fears. And so this is what we were interested in. We wanted to learn more about what supported the formation of this trusting relationship in group supervision and what would prevent the building of the trust. On to you. Yes.
Thank you. So just back a slide, if you don't mind.
Sorry.
Martine, yeah. So to find out what group supervision members need to feel safe and do this deeper work, we conducted phenomenological interviews with 15 coaches who were both supervisors and members of supervision group. And each interview lasted about an hour. Our participants spanned 5 different countries, were certified coaching supervisors.
5 continents.
Continents, sorry, and were certified coaching supervisors or coaches for at least 5 years. And the primary interview question is there, what's been your experience of trust building or lack of trust in group supervision? So we wanted to get a sense of their lived experience around that.
Maybe maybe before we go on with the next slide, could we pause for 30 seconds for each of you to wonder how they would have answered that question? Just for you to be with us before we tell you what the people said.
And by the way, you know, several of the people in this group actually were willing to be interviewed. So thank you again for that.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for connecting with others that were on different continents so we can span over the 5 continents. Well, by now, I suppose everyone has a beginning of an answer to that. So what did the group say?
There were basically 4 main findings from our analysis. The first one, and we'll talk about each of these in more detail, was not really surprising, but confirmed what we've already researched about trust, and that is it's very complex. And people arrive with different understandings and beliefs and experiences with trust. The second was that, and again, this is not surprising to those of you who are trained in supervision or have been part of supervision groups, the supervisor has a really key role. The third one was that one person, this is kind of a surprising one, but one person can impact the group's learning dynamics for good or not so good. And then fourth, bonding as a group helps trust to flourish and allows deeper learning. This confirmed what we had found in our previous research in 2020. So we'll talk a little bit about the first one, the trust is complex.
Okay, I take this one. So the first finding, which is quite obvious but needed to be documented, is it is complex. It is a phenomenon that is complex, and it is defined as you said, by people in different ways, depending on their beliefs and their previous experience with it. And it's also an individual difference, but also cultural difference. Culture plays a role there. So in its most basic form, we can think of trust as an assessment of risk. People use different ways to assess risk: their cognition, their emotional reaction, and their somatic responses. They might reflect on their history with the person involved. Have they betrayed them before? Have they fulfilled their promises systematically? Sometimes. They might also notice the feelings that arise in the situation. You know that expression, I can feel him, I can't. I feel weird around this person, etc., etc. So fear, anxiety around the people, or do I feel a sense of ease, comfort in their presence? They may also take note of the physical sensation in their experience. So this is consistent with neuroscientific research. Participants often described trust as a gut instinct thing. I mean, literally, that's what they said. They also consistently linked their experience of feeling safe with the level of trust. Safe, trust, always together. As one person put it, in relationship of trust, yes, in relationship of trust, I feel people have my back. And our study showed that the heart connection was even more important than wise counsel. So good, wise counsel is not as important as a bond between the people. It's kind of what we could say, I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. When there's an emotional bond between the members, there's a greater sense of safety in the group. The perception is that it is safe to share, safe to be vulnerable. And this is key to supervision group. And this is key for them to be willing to be able to disclose more tender parts of themselves and go dive into deeper work. So here are the comments on the slide that some study participant provided. So very fast. When I trust, I feel relaxed, safe, I'm free. I do not need to pretend. There was little depth in the group and things were very much on the surface. This is a perfect example of just going through the motions and hoping you pick up at least some things because you made an investment of money and time. Another one was we colluded around being very nice and supportive, but little transformation occurred. Up to you.
So the second finding related to the key role played by the supervisor. When experiencing a lack of trust, participants reported looking to the supervisor, or if that was missing, to other members of the group for some kind of support, which can create unhealthy triangulating or subgroups. The supervisor has the responsibility to notice and manage the dynamics of the group, particularly in the early stages. This was kind of interesting to us. Before the learning process even begins, supervisees consider whether or not the supervisor is someone they trust. It was surprising to learn that some people continued to question the trustworthiness of the supervisor they had personally chosen. A particularly challenging situation occurs when the supervisor has been designated by a third party, which often occurs with internal coaching supervision. The stakes can feel really high when the coach is divulging dilemmas in front of colleagues and they've not selected the supervisor leading the group. The supervisor then needs to set the stage for trust to occur, encouraging the group to talk about their relationships with trust, modeling authentic behavior, and helping set in place agreements and a process that will support self-disclosure, risk-taking, and real conversation. So some of the key roles for the supervisor include selecting the group members and helping foster a positive culture, providing appropriate structure, noticing patterns like a lack of participation or people perhaps dominating, competitiveness, advice giving, judgmental behavior. They need to validate these supervisee experiences and incorporate group member thoughts and experiences and basically set the tone for collaborative learning. It's learning, as you know, not only for the supervisees or group members, but also for the supervisor. And at the end of the day, what the supervisor is there to help create is a safe port from which to explore deeper matters, including coach identity. So here's some of the quotes that we got from the participants in our study. This came across over and over again. The effectiveness and safety we experience will depend largely on who's running the group. One person commented, we ask ourselves, can we trust the supervisor to pay attention to process and speak up when needed? So there's that piece of leadership that's looked for from the supervisor. This was interesting. It came from a supervisor who said, you know, as a supervisor, one time I made a mistake with the group. 2 minutes later, I realized what I'd done, and I said, hey, can we look at what just happened in our process? Please give me some feedback. And by asking these questions, the trust between us increased. So that modeling authenticity and vulnerability on the part of the supervisor really supported the flourishing of trust. And then finally, who will be able to keep the group safe when talking about particularly challenging topics? Ideally, we're bringing to group supervision the stuff that really matters to us, and that can be very tender and part of our dark side. So we need the right environment to feel safe in doing that.
Okay, so finding number 3, which was a bit surprising at first, but then we thought about family dinners and family reunion, and it became a bit more obvious, is one person can impact the group's learning dynamic. Yeah, why? Because they can impact the trust in the group. In some cases, the willingness of just one person to step up, share their challenges, really helped open the door to a greater intimacy in the entire group. The expression of vulnerability can be very contagious. So participants also reflected on how one person's behavior could affect the trust in the opposite way. Sometimes even well-meaning coaches, and remember that it's not intentional, well-meaning coaches can offer less than helpful feedback. I mean, they can come across as critical or judgmental. So one member can take up also more of their share of the space in the group. And so unconsciously, they're acting out of reactivity. They're uneased, and then they take a lot of space, and this does not help the group to have a space to reflect and look at what is being vulnerable, what they're vulnerable about, etc. So when a problematic person, let's call them problematic person, they're not problematic, but in this situation they are, is not counseled to change and their behavior continues, well, participants reported that the other members of the group tend to shut down. Either they withdraw silently, less happens, or they hold back to protect themselves, telling stories. In either case, deeper, transformative learning is stunted. No way it can go further. So let me show you a few comments. Yes, it works. And those are comments, as Lynn said, that we've chosen, but there are lots of them because we had 15 interviews. So we've taken the most significant. It seemed that because one person was able to be vulnerable, everybody was able to be vulnerable too. Another one says, a member of the group pretended to be more experienced practitioner and tended to lecture others. The person was consuming the space, creating a less than fruitful experience.
So a final key finding was that trust and transformative learning are supported when the group develops an emotional bond. This phenomenon known as resonance in relationships, kind of like Martin Buber's I and Thou, is a true form of intersubjectivity. When people truly connect with one another, then space opens up for deeper reflection and exploration. It was notable that the bonding occurs in the moment and does not necessarily entail becoming close friends. Rather, it is about being colleagues and sharing a special experience together. And here's some of the quotes that from the interviews that relate to this emotional bonding. If I'm getting into a learning group, I need to feel safe. If I'm frightened or nervous, I don't learn. And this is even from very experienced practitioners that entering into a new group, or maybe you're in a group and you know some people, but then others come in that you don't know. This can trigger this anxiety for people. The fact that there was a lot of vulnerability, people were able to be really genuine and authentic and bring themselves. Maybe like you can identify with a person. At the end of the day, you can learn from their experience. When one of the participants is showing their vulnerability and everybody calms down and keeps quiet for a moment, then the whole group goes into a deep heart feeling. Everything's flowing and everything's happening. And again, it's not just the person who's bringing the case, but how people are reacting to that person in their case. That also grows when there's this feeling of connection among the group members.
So when we had these 4 findings, we realized that there was something there, some connections that we could identify. As Lynn just said, it's not only the depth of what the people bring, but it's also the systemic reaction. The deeper you offer to go, the deeper the people go, unless you have one person who blocks the system. So we've been looking at that and come up with a model. The model is a bit complex to show in a short webinar like today. So we kept it for the chapter, but we've made a little summary of it. So we called it the iceberg model because we go up to show different levels of trust, but just the general mechanic we wanted to share with you today. So trust is associated with both safety and risk. So with greater trust, so perceived level of safety in the group, then there is a willingness to disclose more intimate case. So it's the level of risk taken in bringing cases, which is the second part of the dynamic. Then when people disclose more intimate cases, they fully describe their case, including their own vulnerability and experience in it, not just facts and stories. They're likely to receive deeper level of feedback, which is the third one, nature of the group work and feedback. So not only the individual is more willing to integrate those perceptions and learn on a level that supports transformation, but then the group dynamics also is impacted. And so then we can say, well, the nature of the group work and feedback prescribes the nature of the group dynamic. So the dynamic is different, and we've identified the several dynamics in the model. And because the group dynamic is at such level, then the nature and the level of learning is different. And that's when we are able to say some groups can go to deeper transformative learning, when others just get random learning because they're there and because they observe others, but nothing is happening within the group as such. So this model is in the chapter. We have not yet the information when it will be published. We tend, Lynn and I, to be very compliant with deadlines, and that makes us a bit ahead of the rest of the authors. So whenever we get the information, we'll pass it on to Lily and Damien, so you will know when it will be available. So this suggests that learning, transformative learning, requires a systemic perspective where members and the supervisor, attend to not only their own presence and their own participation in the group, but also to the group as a whole, and to the process of learning and development. So we all go together. We're all in it together. That is the point in our model.
So going back to the question that Martine posed earlier, we'd now like to invite you to reflect on your own experience with the creation or the absence of trust in a supervision group and its impact on the learning, the depth of the learning. And so what we thought we'd do is invite you to get into small groups. If we can ask for your help, Damien, and use the next 7 minutes to discuss your experience either as a group member or a group supervisor. And what in that experience do you feel can help a supervision group break through a surface level of learning to go to a deeper level? I think we've all been there where, you know, it's been nice learning and somebody leaves with tips or some ideas, but we're talking about like really being able to look at the why or my own relationship with the situation, or perhaps even a parallel process that's being observed in the group. So our question is, what can help get that group to break through and get down into those deeper levels in your experience?
Is 7 minutes the right time for you, Damien?
Yeah, we have 30 minutes, so you can do it a little bit longer if you want to too. You want to do 7 or you want to do 10?
Lynn?
Why don't we go for 8?
Okay.
And then it'll give us a little time to discuss afterwards and then
Our
conclude.
invitation is to take either your coach hat or your supervisor hat and wonder as a coach in a group, as a supervisor in a group.
Second. One more there.
One of the things we didn't really talk about so much, but maybe to think about, is sometimes in groups we notice, you know, this amiability, this kind of pleasantness, politeness, even cordial hypocrisy, sometimes that forms where the group is doing the work, but it's very much on a surface level where people are still being pretty careful with what they talk about, what they bring.
Usually nice groups though. No
Mhm.
tension, everybody agrees, we're nice to each other.
I think we are ready now. Okay, so we'll be back in 8 minutes plus 1 to come back.
Sounds good. Thank you.
See
I'm going
you.
to stop.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome back, everybody.
So we'd love to hear from you what emerged in your group discussions around this question, or maybe you took the question in a little bit different direction. But any learnings or insights that came up from your group that someone would like to share with the rest of the group here.
And feel free to write in the chat too if you want to.
Mhm.
We're not going to designate someone, are we?
Well, I can try. We've discussed the fact that there are many other factors in the building of trust in a group. I know on my paper, I know 3 of them. One of them is the group style. The group can either be very mental or very emotional or very action-oriented, and this is giving a style for the supervision, of course. Another factor is the dominance of the parallel process. You know that there are a lot of parallel processes in group supervision, and sometimes the parallel process embarks the group in something which is no more what we would like to see. And the third thing is, I know I've been participating to a lot of group supervision out of my sphere, and I've noticed that some groups are using emergence a lot, and some groups are trying to use a tool. And of course, this has an effect on the building of the trust. The example I took is, for instance, if you have to try to analyze ethical dilemma. If you go emergence, good luck. If you use a tool like stretching, then you can fix that in quite quickly.
Thank you, Michelle. Who else would like to share with us their reflections?
If I can also just tag on to your first point, Michelle, about group style, there's like that tenor of the group, what kind of group is this? Is it more emotional or action oriented? I also think the development level of the group is important to look at. Has this group been together a short time or a longer time? Are these more experienced practitioners, or are these coaches that are relatively new to the profession?
Yeah, we can add on this topic, because we're on this topic, as also the style of the supervisor. Is the supervisor a kind of teacher / authoritative problem solver? Is the supervisor on the other side holding the group, not even facilitating the group, just holding emotionally the group and just letting the group self manage themselves? So we can think of that. Yes, I can see Gigi is nodding. I can see Mary is thinking. I can see Ida is freezing in Argentinian winter. Who wants to share? Yep.
Sunny.
Yeah, and thanks, Lynn. In our group, the initial question came up about wanting the group to go deeper. And often as a supervisor, we come up with, and it's part of our ego, need to see this group do something or be something. And Gigi gave some very insightful comments about that. And it really brought me to the point of feeling that this emergent quality of the group, if we can extract ourselves from the I want this, I see this as, and allow the group to self-form and self-identify. And as coaches, we want to bring out in each individual their own empowerment, that applies to the group also. And that just holding it, as you were saying, really affirming what's already there, rather than saying, I want this group to be A, B, C, D, or I want it to look like this or look like that, or to be in this place. That really affirming it and supporting wherever that group is, I think it will naturally, emerge in a way that shows trust and vulnerability, whether it comes through, parallel process or some other person leading that, demonstrating it or not. That's sort of the magic or the secret sauce is, as a practitioner and as a facilitator of that process, sort of letting go and stop wanting it to be whatever it is we think it should be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And Jim, I loved your comment about trusting the group to do its work in its own time and honoring that. I mean, we're inviting them to go deeper because we know that our clients need us to help them look at things very differently and think differently and experience things differently for them to deal with the challenges in their world. And at the same time, we need to meet our group where it is, where they are. Yeah, thank you.
Another perspective?
I want to add to that piece, and this is Helen here. When Sonny was talking about allowing the group to self-forming, like self-identifying, it somehow it actually sparked what in our group talked about this one point. One of our members talked about the person who's presenting the case is vulnerable, and the group is vulnerable as well. And it feels like just as we go through this process, it feels like it's no longer about the case, but about like them or us, the whole group. And then I thought this might be a very interesting thought, where I thought about going from duality to non-duality, of initially maybe we as a group thinking we're wanting to be the contributor, as this is our role. And then, so yes, and then as we relax into the space, instead of be the contributor, let the sharing or observation from us to through us, as you know, from a duality to non-duality, of no longer just the contributor, but being part of the process of sharing and then allowing that vulnerability, or really kind of work with what's happening in the space. So I thought that was fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I think Martine talked about this a little bit, and maybe I mentioned it as well, but ideally the group supervision space can be a place for the shadow. And so it's not just about, here's the case, what are the potential solutions, or, you know, just it's a much more intimate, tender place that involves a lot more vulnerability.
Yeah,
And one of the things we found out from our research is people want to feel your heart is there more than your wise counsel.
And we've been able to identify different level of trust and different type of learning, as we showed on the dynamic. And in this level, there is one where it's about exactly what Helen shared. It's about recognizing the people, acknowledging their identity, rather than solving whatever client issue. Not to say that it's not important, but it's a different type of work. Another perspective before we hand on the mic back to Damien?
If I could ask a question, Martine and Lynn, one of the things that you said was that groups feel, or people feel more trusting when they have a supervisor who, this wasn't your word, but basically enforces the ground rules. I'm curious, are there any particular ground rules that you found that were most helpful in creating trust, that when they were enforced created the, you see, I'm getting messed up here, but any particular criteria for ground rules that make for a more trusting group that when enforced do it well?
Okay, so we have to be ethical and say what we did and what we didn't. Okay, so in our methodology, we didn't ask for that question. So we didn't ask, what are the ground rules, etc., right? So we cannot answer based on the research. But what we can tell you is that we have testimony in the interviews of rules that were not enforced and that were a big obstacle to trust. So one of the rules that was not enforced, and we can imagine this is a rule, which is if one person feels not okay about a comment, that to open up a session and discuss, make a regulation. So regulation not enforced, bad for the group, that we know for sure. It means I felt offended. This is my responsibility if I feel offended, okay? It's not the person who offended me. This is the comment I made, right? People, feedback can come up with bad, but it was not intentional. If the person says, oh, I'm not okay with the comment, and then the supervisor does not jump on side and say, okay, let's stop, time off, what happened, blah, blah, blah. If that is not enforced, we have over and over testimony that this is really bad for the group and the trust is really hard to get back. That's what we can tell you. Second one is the one we spoke about, the difficult person. The person is not difficult, but the behavior of the person is not adequate with what's happening in the group, and the supervisor doesn't do anything. We have testimony of supervisors saying they wanted to keep the person at any cost in the group, as a matter of inclusion, right? Up to the point that the rest of the group came and said, we're just leaving. It's the person or us. So the supervisor fired the person, if I may say. I mean, just gave feedback and say, this pond is not for you as a fish, just not matching, right? And the group was well off and the person was well off, and they're still speaking to each other.
If I could just add one other thing to Martine, and that was the issue of bystanders. So the supervisor noticing if there's some members of the group that don't bring a case and aren't participating, again, that affected the trust level. So nobody gets to just kind of show up and hear everybody else's cases and not give as one of the members.
We need to start wrapping up. We have a couple of minutes. I don't know if anything you want to say before we finish briefly, Lynn and Martine.
Just one last invitation. If you in the room, you dive in the pool, you come up with real cases where you show your vulnerability, you tell your experience, you give your doubts, fenceless, I'd say, chances are that you will get a better feedback, and you will learn at a deeper level, and you will initiate a process with the entire group that where everybody gets to a deeper level. So that's our invitation. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank both of you. If people want to write a note to them in the chat box, it's an opportunity to thank them there as a way to recognize them for the work that they have done today. It was really a great session. And Lily, what is coming up next month?
Well, every third Monday of the month, so September 16th, we have Wendy Ann Smith coming to talk about the critical path of ethics in coaching supervision. It should be a robust session, so please do join us. And then October 21st, Sam McGill will be joining us on Promises, 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 a core source of ethical trouble, kind of promises that we make.
That was very interesting. Anything else, Lily, we need to announce?
We are working on the next conference. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Might be in person, just a little bit of a hook. Look at that response. Okay. See you all next month. Thank you for coming.
Thanks
Lovely to see you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Lily.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Martine. Thanks, Lynn.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.